Hello, everyone. Thank you for having us today. It's a pleasure and an honor to have your time. So today's topic that I'll be discussing is something that's close to heart because I think in the spirit of blockchain, we talk about immutability, we talk about transparency, but what does that come with? That comes with limited access. It's not still viable to everyone. We talk about the technological challenges of lowering the barrier of entry to blockchain, and really in the spirit of decentralized finance, being able to be scalable and promote upward mobility for those that are both franchised and disenfranchised. And I don't think this is more applicable than in the developing economies and markets that are actually the real growth vectors in the sectors for blockchain and for DeFi in general. So there are a few use case examples I'd like to discuss with you today. And again, thank you for letting me share this, I think, very important component and ethical component to what we do here in blockchain. So firstly, empowering the unbanked, financial inclusion through blockchain technology. Okay. I think to many of us, banking seems commonplace and often we take it for granted. We complain about paying to spend our own money, or even who can spend their money. The times of carrying a card, writing a check, F2F are going by the wayside, whilst the time of AI and the start of mainstream fintech blockchain adaptation by the world's major enterprises, there means addressing the human condition. And what do I mean by that? The halving, no pun intended, for the have-not. So we have halved, we have divided, we have developed more accessibility and more technology in the space, but is it accessible to everyone? So, for example, we talk about banking. You think because we live in a developed nation, we can go to a bank, open up a bank account, we can do a checking account and have a debit card. But a lot of these F2F solutions are going by the wayside because they're either geographically inaccessible or socioeconomically inaccessible for the powers that be. Not everyone can go to a brick and mortar location and say, hey, I need to withdraw X amount of currency, because it's not accessible. But with the advent of wireless devices and internet, etc., we have a burgeoning ability to bring forth economic prosperity to those less enfranchised. I have a couple of very good use cases for that, okay? And before I go to that next slide, I want to talk about, for the have-nots, we all deserve upward mobility, and the ability to monetize your freedom lies in blockchain and its related technologies. And what do I mean by that? Again, I want to stress immutability. Everything is on the blockchain, it's transparent. In its ethos, in its spirit, it's committed to providing something that's in fair play, regardless of your religious doctrines, your socioeconomic doctrines, or where you are geographically. It really should democratize decentralized finance for the masses. Now, many of us talk about making a play and making a profit on, the wonderful technologies that we're involved in, but many people in some developing nations use this as an apparatus to feed their families, to have water once a week, the ability to send money abroad for their relatives without being charged 25 to 30% of premium on what you're sending. There are many migrant workers in the world, and just for even like the sakes of education, where it's a critical apparatus in the food chain of what we call being a human being. Okay? Examples. There's a few examples I'd like to cover, okay? There are many examples of how blockchain and DeFi in general are providing a segue into normalcy, but giving the masses through their mobile devices a breath of financial freedom. I talked about that. But within the food chain, the underdeserved rightfully have a place to be labeled and accepted and recognized in this movement we call blockchain and diversified finance. Unbanking, or banking the unbankable, is not an excuse in title. It should be something that we do in practice and in ethos for our fellow human being, okay? So many people are underexposed or not represented, not from the lack of exposure from our industry, but just lack of acceptance for the generalized market. So every day when we are trading, or when we're investing, or we're providing a new segue into a project, we should remember those that are not democratized in that process. Let me give you a couple use cases that I'll roll into on my PPT here. Countries like Nigeria, like Guatemala, even Bangladesh. These are good use cases because even if you have the paper currency, you have a few challenges. Will they accept your paper currency? Even though they say they are accepted in an exchange or a money exchange program, they may not be. You know, Naira and Taki sometimes are not accepted. But the monetary value is there, and as a deflationary mechanism to even the playing field for those that deserve to have purpose, deserve to have economic freedom. Why shouldn't we allow blockchain and decentralized finance to be a catalyst for change? Everyone talks about so many of the negatives, but we're still so early. As I was proposing in the last panel talk I had yesterday, I had my counterpart had very good points, but he was very jaded and had a negative connotation on what blockchain and DeFi does. But no matter which way we look at it, 10 years, even 5 years ago, even after Litecoin and BTC, the centralized banking said, oh, we'll never use blockchain, we'll never adapt to wireless and digital wallets. But then came China, then came all the digital currencies, now we have ETFs. And believe it or not, most of the Bitcoin that we have on the surface is leveraged on the financial products by these so-called banks that would never touch DeFi. So here we are now, 15 years later, democratizing the process, but where even conventional finance is accepting this burden, which is becoming an advantage for them, right? So now it's the popular thing to be. Some of the big banks offer financial products and technologies that are not crypto, but are every bit crypto, It's just funny, I used the use case of Starbucks yesterday. If you are investing, you're loading money on a Starbucks card or buying a Starbucks card, you're crowdfunding. It's just for Starbucks, and they're making a profit on the things they sell to you at a special price on pennies on the deal, right? So if a Starbucks could do that before the advent of any wallet or any mass blockchain adaptation or decentralized finance, why can't people that just want to live not have exposure to this, okay? Use cases, again, I think use cases are very important. Let's look at some interesting parallel cases. El Salvador and the Central African Republic have made Bitcoin and other digital currencies legal tender. The Bahamas, Jamaica, Nigeria, Brazil, and many other nations are adopting CBDCs in their regular banking practices, and eventually in their modus operandi will adapt DeFi because it's more fluid and linear in acceptance and tradability, but most importantly, accessibility for the geographically limited or economically limited population basis. So the barrier of entry is being lowered. And I think that's an amazing thing. That's a hopeful thing in the process or in the mission of mass adaptation. And we're fortunate enough to be in a country like the Emirates, where they provide many different access points for this type of integration. And it is really a shining beacon that kind of gives access via here as a business point for some of the jurisdictions and nationalities I'm talking about, right? So of unique interest should be the like of Nigeria and Indonesia. The advent of common access to wireless technology has made the likes of countries like Nigeria a flashpoint for adapting the gospel of blockchain, where immutability and speed outperform conventional banking solutions. So again, even though you live in a country that has a raising GDP and a population, a rise of a general user population, it doesn't mean that they have accessibility to banking. So again, we go back to banking the unbankable, right? I think that we need to continue this understanding and acceptance for broader adaptation and acceptance. This does not even delve into the lack of access to the conundrum which I just addressed. People are empowered regardless of their geographical limitations, social inequality, et cetera, okay? And beyond the efficient introduction of fiat on and off ramps, no matter what way we look at it now, fiat currency needs decentralized finance and blockchain as much as it needs fiat. Again, I want to stress in the spirit of blockchain that we often think of fiat as the end commodity or the ends to the means, but really we need to go back and look at for the fact that I believe that the fiat currency is just a vehicle for the building of infrastructure and information. All the meta is the important end case, and from that aspect as well, information and knowing your demographic and also adaptation. How do we know how to lower the barrier of entry and make it a more plausible and feasible means of entry if we don't know? So I think one of the biggest things for developing nations and people at large is that we're able to collect all of this data to make a meaningful and viable entry point for the unbankables that we talk about right now. Okay. So use cases continued. You know, we have, for example, Indonesia. There are 90% of traders active on decentralized and centralized exchanges in Indonesia. And they are a good use case because balancing both religious doctrine and economic doctrine, they limited the centralized exchanges to 40 licenses there. I think this is telling because they know for a fact that there needs to be some progress in allowing accessibility to economic opportunity and forward mobility. And is it scalable? This is a good way of showing scalability. So I would like to use Indonesia as a use case to show how it has improved both livability and banking solutions. Again, where banking in some regions of the country is not ethical or allowed, but people still need a vehicle to move for upward mobility and also improvement of life and living conditions, right? Okay, so an over 20-to-1 preference over the aforementioned legacy fintech options in Indonesia is a great example. Again, with the religious and social stigmas, and also Nigeria as a use case just to empower mobility for the usage of funds, but again, also for the social networking opportunities that arise from the networks that are provided by blockchain and also decentralized finance. Okay. In Nigeria and Indonesia, a few anecdotes about each. I'll provide this later. Information and data and beyond. So data and information from the masses is the true treasure and the most valuable meta in banking the unbankable, and will continue to be, because how do we know our customer unless we have the data, right? And the statistical data also shows that the true gold mine besides the data is the user and the use case. So again, we don't have really a thermometer for the climate. The best use case for that is the developing economies that still have rising population rates, right? Because they will set forth the trends for the future, you know? Okay, and the biggest byproduct, but the main centric reason being ethically centric in the spirit of blockchain is, again, allowing access. That's one of the biggest challenges, is allowing access. What we take for granted, again, every day, I want to just kind of stress and reiterate that you should have the ability, you should have the right to say, okay, I need to buy these medicines. This pharmacy only takes cash or a digital wallet, but I can't get cash because there's no bank, and my child is deathly ill. Shouldn't we have that right, just like it's our right to be on a blockchain, to be immutable, to be transparent, to be heavy in our feelings to provide that access and use case through technology? I think that every human being deserves that right. So we often lose sight that DeFi, commodities, and fiat are just ultimately a vehicle for data and the immutable dream of a blockchain. I think this encompasses everything that we're doing at events like CED and beyond. And with us trying to be good in the face of compliance and popular opinion and general acceptance, what a way to lead that forth, then provide a good use case and a good utility for mankind as a whole. Not just for trading, not just in SBF, you know, not all the negative stigma and connotation of wash trading, centralized, whatever negative stigma that people and media throw at us. But I think many people here in common, I think most people here don't feel like it's a bad thing to include your fellow mankind, your fellow human being, in being able to have the ability to have a better life. And I think in just the decentralized portion of DeFi and technology as a whole, and blockchain, the adaptation of blockchain, it's an efficient, cost-effective, but most importantly, very transparent and ethical way of upward mobility for all human beings. So with this last 45 seconds that I have, I'm going to ask you a question. How many of you would rather donate or contribute to the process of upward mobility for someone else than hand someone a $1 or $2 bill? Raise your hand if you think that empowering others is important. your fellow human and mankind. Everyone's hand should be up for that, regardless of what you feel, right? If you do that, adaptation and usership will make your business model work. Just by doing the right thing, the more general acceptance and mass adaptation in general markets will take care. If you do the right thing, automatically you'll have dividends for all of us in all of our related sectors in blockchain and DeFi. So I'll end with that. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate your time. Did you have a question, ma'am? I'm sorry. You can come up. Yeah.
First, it's important to empower people to do better. But if we talk about the underbanked segment, I think there is a big confusion in your speech because you refer to examples like Starbucks, which are not their reality. And if we talk about their reality, their life is still goes via fiat. Okay. So if we talk about Nigeria, these were not the citizens who were not having banking account or access to banking system to transform it from the savings to crypto.
Sure.
So what is their solution now? Because still fiat is very, very expensive. Transforming crypto into fiat or vice versa is very expensive. Trading with payment cards based on crypto is very expensive, especially globally.
And I think I use that Starbucks example as not as a good example for adaptation. I just wanted to use, if it's easy enough for you to go get Starbucks, it should be easy enough for someone to go get water via that very, unabrupt and unobtrusive process. And as far as Nigeria is concerned, yes, it's very expensive right now, but it's one of the largest, continues to be one of the largest markets, regardless of the conditions of what the government or outside market conditions are. But with more adaptation, the rest of the financial sector that supports around eventually will be affected by the fiat on-ramp and off-ramp. So they will be forced to reduce costs by adaptation. So once again, I go back to, okay? What's that? No, I mean, we're talking about MasterCard and Visa, but we could talk about blockchain providing decentralized finance solutions based on more adaptations. We never thought that any of the major banks would offer an ETF. If you talked about 10 years ago, you would never think that they would have a financial product based on DeFi or crypto as a main hedge. So I think that the possibility exists. I'm not saying what you're saying is not right or wrong right now for the conditions, but I also feel like that 10 years ago, I would have never imagined that we'd have an ETF or Bitcoin as a hedge for most investments for major conventional financial institutions. So what I'm saying is, I look at the possibility and that a solution will come around through mass adaptation. I'm not saying that there's not challenges, I totally agree with you. But I just use those as use cases as, even with the difficult conditions, people still continue to adapt and use DeFi and centralized trading platforms wirelessly, regardless of the powers that be. And I just think that's a good hedge for upward mobility for people in general. So I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying that I think that the possibility will arise that things will change shortly.
My argument was not about crypto is not developing. It is developing. But my argument was exactly to the underbanked segment, that there is no infrastructure to bypass the traditional banking and fiat system for them right now. Even in UAE, if you want to apply crypto as a means of payment, you will have a legal conundrum to implement into your business. And there is no way to pay in crypto salary, for instance, if you are not part of a specific free zone.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I really, that's why I'm talking about banking the unbankable. This is a future scenario right now. And yes, there's a lot of geographical and utility-based challenges and mostly compliance-based challenges. But in the end, there has been so much friction. I want you to look at what the US Treasury has done, the EU. Everyone has tried to even, if they said if we can't put enough taxes in front, we'll KYC you and due diligence you to death. We'll provide less incentives for you. You have to create special zones. You have to come to a place like the Emirates to do business. All of that is true. But even with compliance and the powers that be, we continue to strive forward and move forward. I'm not saying all of those things are very valid. I didn't disagree with you, actually. I'm just saying that with more adaptation, It's already changing. Banks are adapting our technology, our financial products, and our methodologies in their general use cases to provide a value package, not just for investors, but for people in general, because they cannot ignore it anymore. So to a certain extent, it's a good compromise between a deflationary action of what we can do in DeFi versus what's happening in general fiat and in the Forex market, right? So I'm just saying, keep hope alive. I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm just giving you some good use cases where no matter all the challenges and obstacles, it's empowering and improving people's lives. So they are banking themselves because, again, banking is a privilege. It's not a pre-existing condition. So we can use that same argument with banking. In theory, you can go anywhere and say, okay, I can open a bank account as long as I have an identity. But sometimes that's not enough. So I think that's the parallel that I'm drawing for what we're doing in DeFi. So yeah, please don't mistake what I said. I totally agree with you, but I'm just giving you, even with all of the resistance models, how we continue to strive and the market is improving. And the outlook for humankind based on blockchain is improving. So thank you though. I really welcome that input, so yeah. All right, well, if there's no other questions, I'll take my leave and I look forward to meeting all of you out on the floor. Thank you so much for your time. Be blessed. Thank you.